Welcome back, bloomers, to another episode of Orchid Blooms Podcast. I am your host, Orchid Brown with Orchid Blooms Podcast. You can find me on TikTok, X, Blue Skies, at Orchid Eye Brown. This week's podcast episode is on the weight of resentment. Today we're talking about something heavy, something we carry silently, privately, and for far too long. This episode is important because resentment isn't just anger. It isn't disappointment. It's not even about people who hurt us. Resentment is about the unhealed part of ourselves that still remember what happened. It's the emotional bruise that never fully faded. It's the replaying of moments we didn't get closure for. It's the truth we swallow so we could keep the peace. And today, I want us to break this down clearly, without shame, without pretending, and without spiritual bypassing. This episode will cover what resentment really is, how bitterness forms, what holding a grudge actually means, and why unforgiveness doesn't make you a bad person. It simply means you're still healing. So take a breath and let's get into the weight of resentment. What does resentment really mean? It is a bitter indignation at having been treated unfairly. Resentment is an emotion that grows quietly. It starts with a moment of hurt, something someone said, something someone did, something someone denied. But resentment doesn't grow from the event itself. It grows from the lack of acknowledgement. Resentment forms when we were dismissed, minimized, gaslit, or expected to just get over it. Resentment is the wound, the silence, and the expectation to move on, all sitting in your chest, all at the same time. It's a burden because it lingers. It lingers when we are misunderstood. It lingers when we didn't receive an apology. It lingers when we had to be the biggest person while the other person played small. Resentment says, what happened still matters to me, even if it never mattered to you. And that awareness becomes heavy over time. It becomes how we see people. It changes how we see ourselves. Resentment is not dramatic. Resentment is truth we didn't get to express. As I mentioned in a previous podcast episode, apologies don't do anything for me anymore. Maybe if it was your first offense, I will accept the apology. But if it continues to happen and you keep apologizing, I'm over it. Your apology means nothing at this point. Nothing whatsoever. It holds no weight. It's not even comparable to a cup of water that's replenishing me after I take a drink at all. So a lot of people feel that apologizing constantly makes a difference, but it really doesn't. As far as I'm concerned, you can keep the apology. How bitterness forms. Bitterness is often treated like a flaw, like a character defect, like we're wrong for feeling it. But bitterness is not a personality, it's a symptom. Bitterness forms when resentment goes unaddressed. Boundaries were crossed repeatedly, and we pretended we were fine. Bitterness is resentment that hardened. Bitterness is the moment you stop giving people the benefit of the doubt. It's when optimism turns into realism. It's when compassion is placed with caution. For a long time, you believed people had good intentions. Then you learn intentions don't stop harm. Bitterness forms when we've healed everyone but ourselves. And for many of us, bitterness was the shield we used before we found our voice, our boundaries, and our strength. Now that you're older, wiser, and more aware, you don't carry bitterness the same way. You're not bitter, you're informed. In the past, and I have said this in a few podcast episodes prior to this one, that I told people that I know, that I'm prone to bitterness. And even though I said that, I don't believe I truly understood it. I did not sit down and take the time and just kind of go through the emotions that I was feeling during that time when I was prone to bitterness and what brought me there. But now looking back at my statement and why I felt that I was prone to bitterness, I look back now and I realize that my prone to bitterness was more of an alarm. It was an alarm letting me know that something is being repeated. Something has been done before. You learned from that. Again, you're informed. And now it's happening again. So it was an alarm. And then what came out of my mouth during that time was more checking the person or checking the situation and saying, no, this is what it actually is. There's no gaslighting here. This is what it actually is. This was not a mistake. This is actually what it is. And standing on that. And once I did that for myself and I actually took ownership of the bitterness, the alarm that was coming up that prompted me to be bitter in that situation, and understanding that what I'm experiencing, I have experienced before, I have learned from this, but here we are again, doing this again. How are you going to handle it differently? Before, I acted like everything was fine and let's go back to normal. Now looking back, after everything that I've learned, after all that I've been informed about, now it's a different story. Now I'm not prone to bitterness anymore. I just feel it coming on and I just knew what it was and I act accordingly. I don't give passes. There is no negotiation. It is what it is. This is a situation. This is what's happening. And now I release you. We are not negotiating narratives. This is what happened. We're sticking to this is what's happening. We are not allowing any other distraction to be thrown in, any other possibility. Maybe there's a different perspective. No. This is what's happened. This is the facts. Now stand on it. And I release myself. It's no longer unaddressed anymore. I made sure it was placed right in the middle of the table. This is what it is. And this is what's going to happen going forward. I made that decision. I don't leave room for you to make a decision because you're not the person who was harmed. I was. So this is my decision. And I understand that you want to negotiate this decision to see where you can somehow get out of accountability, but you can't. This is a situation and this is the results. Sometimes you just got to learn to stand on business. And yes, that might be hurtful to the other person, but that's really not your problem because they weren't thinking about you when they caused the harm. So why should you be thinking about them when you decide to put up your boundaries, set your standards, and explain that this is the result and you're going to respect that? Choosing to be a better version of yourself is a very difficult process. A lot of people think that, oh, it's just being nice. It's not about being nice. Nice is fickle. That's why when people come up to me and say, I'm a nice guy, I'm a nice girl, I'm such a nice person, I could care less because at the end of the day, being nice doesn't mean that you stand for something. It doesn't mean that you won't cause harm. It doesn't mean anything. It put it on a weight, it weighs nothing. Sometimes you have to stop sacrificing yourself for everyone's comfort and let them know this is where we stand and this is how it's going to go. You've made a decision, now I have as well. Now let's get into the root of unforgiveness. Here's the truth most people don't want to admit. Unforgiveness doesn't make you a bad person. It means you're still healing. You don't owe immediate forgiveness to anyone, especially not the person who refuses accountability, rewrites the story, play the victim, or minimize the pain they caused. Forgiveness is simply the womb saying, I am not ready to let this go because I haven't been heard. The people who demand quick forgiveness usually do so because they want relief, not accountability. They want comfort, not truth. They want peace, but not responsibility. Your healing does not run on someone else's timeline. Unforgiveness does not mean hate. Unforgiveness means honesty. This is where your personal truth comes in. You're not someone who forgets, and that has saved you more times than it hurt you. You don't forget because people have selective memories. Don't get me wrong, they remember. They always remember. Even when they act like they don't, they always remember. They always remember the part that benefits them, the narrative that paints them as innocent, and the version of events that makes you look irrational or emotional. People forget what they did conveniently, but they remember how you reacted. So you don't forget. Not because you're stuck, because memory protects you. You remember so you can recognize patterns, avoid repeating cycles, and remind someone exactly where the line is when they pretend it never existed. Not forgetting is a form of self-protection. It is not resentment, it's awareness. It is not malice, it's clarity. It is not a flaw, it is survival. Thinking back to when I learned this very important lesson of not forgetting, I was actually in high school. And this was a family dynamic, arguments that we would have on a weekly basis with a family member. And I just realized at some point that during the argument, the narrative of the story was changed. And I was like, wait a minute, that is not how it happened. But at the time, I couldn't remember it. And I felt that that was a problem because the person got away with what they were saying, with rewriting the story, because I didn't think that I needed to keep tally of what this person was doing. So after that experience, I changed completely. I said, all right, so these are the types of people I'm going to have to deal with in the world. So let me never forget what they did. To have a mental note going forward that if anyone comes up to me with a rewritten story, I just laugh in their face and tell them the real story and said, what now? What now? And this is something I had to learn in high school. Narrative changes to fit people's story. They always need to be the victims. And I always find that it's the people with victim mentality that like to rewrite the story to make themselves look like the abused person in all of this. Poor them, feel bad for them. And I thought, oh God, this is so annoying. Like people with victim mindset, they just get on my nerves. They really do. So it's sad. And then you start pointing out stuff, and then you start asking them questions like, where did this come from? Is that what really happened? Let's talk about when you did this. You know, what happened after you did this? Now you got my reaction. So let's talk about what you did to cause that reaction. There is never any situation in this world where someone got a reaction and they did not do an action to cause it. There is no such thing as there's a reaction without cause. No such thing. In the real world, people do things to cause a reaction. It's a chain of reaction. So when they turn around and said, I don't know what I did. They just gave me this reaction. I just don't know. Poor me. I feel so attacked. I feel so abused. Oh my God. They're lying. And I learned that in high school. And the second indicator for these people is that when you start asking too many questions and they can't answer it, and you can tell that they're now becoming more frantic and they're getting scared because now you're about to catch them, they completely switched into defensive mode and making it seem like you're the bad guy for not believing them in their situation. What do you mean you got a reaction without doing anything? You didn't do anything. You just walked in and smiled and the person just snapped at you just out of nowhere? That doesn't make any sense. You didn't say anything. You just said good morning and they just snapped? That doesn't make any sense. What happened the day before? What happened a week before? What happened a month ago? What happened 6 months ago? What happened a year ago? How long have you guys been friends for? There's so many questions you can ask. And the more you ask questions, the more they just don't know how to respond, the more they don't know how to provide the information, because they can't play victim if they can't answer the question, as far as I'm concerned. A lot of people would think, well, since they can't actually answer the question, they must genuinely don't know. They're genuinely confused. And this person must have just reacted for no reason. No reason in the world. This person did nothing. They're a wall. They don't even have emotions. They don't have interactions. They were just standing there like a wall, and the person just snapped at them. So they must be mentally ill, right? Very odd. Very, very odd. And when you actually sit down with the other person and you get the story, they are able to provide you with so much detail that you cannot turn around and say, okay, you're in the wrong for your reaction. The other person who made up the lie to seem like the victim, who could not provide any details about what they did, is usually the culprit. And that is why they're being so defensive. Like, how dare you not believe me? I've put on this act for you. You should have believed me. Look at my fake tears. I love those people. And they're so dramatic. And they go into a whole acting scheme. And I just remembered in high school looking at this family member and saying, you should have been an actress. You should have been an actor, because you put on such a good performance. The only issue is I saw everything you did. And that is the reason why I don't believe you. They run off in tears and they go lick their wounds. And surprisingly, few minutes later, they come back like nothing happened. They're all good, like they have a mental illness. And they're like the sweetest person in the world. And now they're putting on another show to show that, look, I'm a nice person. So in the future, believe me, because look at how I'm treating you right now. I'm putting on this mask. I have a new performance and I'm here for you. I want you to know and see how genuine and great I was. And what you did see, you never saw. I am the victim. Woe is me. There are so many characters in this world, so many people who have so many different masks, and they show you so many different variations of themselves that you start to think that they have, multiple disorders, or at least split personalities, because they can switch into different masks anytime as if something is genuinely wrong with them. And so when you meet these people and you watch the full performance, because it does feel like you're watching TV. For me, I felt like I was watching TV. And you're trying really hard not to laugh in this person's face because your discernment is so high. It's so high and it's so effective that you can see through bullshit. You can see right through it. So I have met a few entertaining characters in this world who like to lie, who like to act like they don't remember what they did. Something was wrong with them. They're genuinely confused. I don't understand why this person's behaving this way. I'm such a good person. Woe is me. I'm the victim. It is actually a really good show. Now let's move on to the misunderstood truth of holding grudges. People love to shame you for holding grudges, but they never mentioned this part where they earned that grudge. They earned it. They worked so damn hard for it. And yet, for some apparent reason, they're like, how dare you hold a grudge? I'm amazing. To you, only to you. Let's redefine it, shall we? A grudge is a persistent feeling of ill will or resentment resulting from a past insult or injury. A grudge is not hatred. A grudge is not pettiness. A grudge is not immaturity. A grudge is simply emotional distance, historical evidence, and self-respect. A grudge is your spirit saying, I don't trust you with me anymore. And that's okay. You're not holding a grudge. You're holding a memory with boundaries attached. Grudge form when apologies were insincere, harm was repeated, truth was denied, and forgiveness was taken for granted. Some people don't deserve access to the healed version of you. They lost that privilege when they mishandled the broken one. What happens when you stop forcing forgiveness? This is very important. When you stop rushing your healing, something beautiful happens. You stop spiritually bypassing yourself, number one. Number two, you stop pretending you're okay when you're not. Number three, you stop performing forgiveness to look strong. Can't stand that word, strong. Cannot stand it when people say to me, "You're so strong." No, thank you. Keep it to yourself. Does not mean you should come back and keep pulling that shit. No, 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 no. It's time for you to go. I release you. And of course, the fourth, you stop dishonoring your emotions. You begin honoring your truth. You begin giving yourself room to feel, room to process, room to release at your own pace. You don't let people manipulate you with guilt. You don't let them dictate the terms of your healing. You don't let them pressure you into pretending the past didn't happen. You heal authentically, not performatively, and the resentment slowly loses its weight because you finally allowed yourself to carry it honestly. I found the biggest issue with resentment is when you want to let go, but your body won't. How do we help ourselves through resentment? One of the hardest part about resentment is this: your mind can understand the truth long before your emotions catch up. You can know it wasn't about me. Their behavior reflected on them, not my worth. I learned the lesson. I won't allow that again. And still feel the resentment sitting in your chest like a stone. That's not weakness. That's not immaturity. That's your nervous system still holding the memory of the wound. And the longer resentment sits inside of you, the more it hardens. Not because you want to hold it, but because your body is still trying to protect you. My friend and I were discussing forgiveness, unforgiveness, and resentment. We realized the resentment stayed because our bodies stayed in defense mode long after the situation ended. We weren't choosing to hold it. Our nervous system was still trying to make sense of the danger. That's the truth most people miss. We don't choose to hold grudges. Our bodies choose safety over release. The moment you take it personally, your body locks it in. We made it personal. Even though we now know it wasn't about us, at the time our bodies experienced it as humiliation, disappointment, betrayal, rejection, and the body does not let go of what it perceives as a threat. Stop blaming yourself for struggling in this area. That's the main thing I want every single one of you to take away from this situation or what I'm discussing. Stop blaming yourself. You did nothing wrong. How you internally processed what you went through it doesn't make you a bad person. Letting go is harder when the hurt was deep. The longer resentment sits, the more it grows root. And it roots itself emotionally. It takes real inner work to pull it out. Wanting to let go doesn't mean you know how to as of yet. It just means you're ready. Now, after everything that I have shared and said, I really wanted to discuss strategies to help yourself when you're struggling to release resentment. This is the hard part. So, number one, separate the story from the self-blame. We have to stop telling ourselves the story of what happened and start telling ourselves the story of who we became afterwards. We need to shift our brain out of victimhood and into power. Number two, remind your nervous system that the threat is over. Every time the resentment comes up, I would literally say out loud, "You are safe now." And eventually my body believes me. And this is quite important because you hear a lot of people talking about waking up in the morning, saying your affirmations, constantly telling yourself that you are blessed and highly favored, things like that. It actually works for resentment and hurt as well. Waking up in the morning or the afternoon or the end of the day or whenever a thought comes into your head that triggers you to go right back to where you were living in that moment of the harm or the hurt, you can tell yourself repeatedly until your mind finally believes it, until your emotions start to feel safe. It works for this situation as well. It definitely worked for me whenever I feel like I'm being pulled back in to something that is over, like it's past. I'm now in a different place. I am now growing. I am now pursuing what I need to pursue. I am much more content. I am happier. But sometimes it pops up and I have to go, let's have another conversation. And I have that conversation with myself until I don't need to do that anymore. Number 3, acknowledging the wound without reopening it. You don't have to minimize what happened. You just don't have to keep living there. And that is what I mean by it keeps popping up in your mind. And you now have to tell yourself, this did happen, but look at the good things that happened because of it. Look at who you are now. Look how much you have grown. Look how much you have learned. You are better than you were before. You are closer to your higher self because of this situation. This was a blessing. You are now blessed and highly favored because of what you've went through. Now, number 4, release the expectation of justice or apology. Part of what keeps resentment alive is waiting for accountability from people who will never give it. Resentment grows when we wait for closure from people who aren't capable of giving it. I 100% agree. As I mentioned earlier in this podcast episode and the podcast episode prior to this, I don't care for apologies. I don't care for multiple apologies. Nothing is really going to change the narrative of what actually happened. So I've never really put too much into an apology. But when it comes to justice, let me tell you, I have always gotten justice because the lies that are told always comes out into the light. The proof always shows up and justice is always mine. So I have never had to question, justice. Will I get justice? No. My justice is karma. And so karma has always been good to me. So for me, that is justice. And the one thing that, puts me in bed at night and I sleep well is knowing that you are going to experience everything that you did to me. Like a cycle, over and over and over again. You will be stuck in it until you take accountability. And that is my justice. And it's been happening since I was young. So again, I always get justice. I don't have to expect it. I always get it. Even when I forget it because I release the situation, I've walked past resentment. I no longer feel any bitter. I'm not even holding a grudge. I always get justice. Number 5, accept that emotions take longer to move than thoughts. Our thoughts move on, but our emotions are slower. That doesn't mean we're stuck. It means we're human. Number 6, understand that letting go is not forgetting. I don't forget. I remember clearly, so I don't repeat it again. Letting go is not erasing the memory. It's removing the emotional charge behind it. Number 7, letting go must feel empowering, not forced. The release has to come from strength and not pressure. The truth is, you can let go while still remembering exactly who someone is. You can forgive without reconnection, and you can heal without pretending it didn't hurt. Resentment is heavy. It wears on the heart. It echoes through our memories. It shapes how safe we feel in relationships, friendships, environments. Here is what I want you to hold on to. You are not wrong for feeling resentment. You are not bad for holding grudges. You are not unhealed for not forgiving as of yet. You are human. What you feel is valid. The weight of resentment only begins to lift when you allow yourself to understand it and acknowledge it and to honor the truth behind it. You deserve to heal at your own pace. You deserve to protect your peace. You deserve relationships where your boundaries are not negotiable. Resentment lifts when your mind and your emotions finally agree that the story is over. That concludes the podcast episode. Thank you for joining me today on Orchid Blooms podcast. Your support is appreciated. Take this time to subscribe, follow, rate, and leave a review on a podcast platform of your choice. Our social media pages are Orchid Bloom's YouTube channel, The Ambitious Obsession Network on Facebook, at The Ambitious Ops on Twitter, at The Ambitious Net on Instagram. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, keep blooming, and I hope you have a splendid day.